I have a full-blown mental breakdown in that hospital room. My baby just had her 3rd birthday, so I wanted to tell her birth story. It technically all started 3 weeks before I had her. I went into preterm prodromal labor at 35 weeks. I had actually had prodromal labor with my 2nd baby, but it was never as bad as where I needed to go into the hospital. So I started having contractions at 35 weeks. They were very close together. I was doing all the things to try and get them to stop. I was in the bath, I was laying down, I was laying on my side, I was doing all the things trying to get these contractions to stop, and they just weren't stopping. Eventually my husband said to me, hey, maybe we should go into the hospital. I told him my contractions are 2 minutes apart, and he was like, yeah, we should definitely go. Mind you, this is my 3rd baby. So we pull the kids out of bed, we go drop them off where we need to drop them off to. We head to the hospital. We get there around midnight or so. At this point, I was 35 weeks exactly. So they get me in, they get me all changed, they check my cervix, and I am 3 centimeters dilated. At this point, it's just a waiting game, trying to work through contractions essentially. A few hours goes by, I get into the tub, I'm doing all the things. My midwife comes in and she says, we need you to get out of the tub because we need to check you. So they check me, I'm 4 centimeters dilated, and then I can go back to being in the tub. At this point, I believe that I got the wireless monitors on me because I was still preterm. I had to have monitoring on me at all times because preterm babies can have weird things going on with their heart. It's a whole thing. After working through my contractions for another probably hour and a half, they check me again. I'm 5 centimeters dilated. So I'm dilating. I forgot to say, at 4 centimeters, they actually gave me a pill to try and stop the contractions. The regular pill that they use was actually in a shortage, so I couldn't use that. So they gave me something different. And then I also got my first steroid shot. They wanted me to come back 24 hours later to get my 2nd round of steroid shots for the baby's lungs, just in case the baby was born that day. So steroid shots for premature lungs is really important. The pill that they gave me to stop the contractions didn't work. I was still having contractions every 2 minutes. However, they came in one more time and they said, you're not dilating anymore. So I was still having contractions, but I wasn't dilating anymore past a 5. Mind you, 5 centimeters is that big. Yes. Eventually, my contractions just fizzle out. I had been having contractions for over 12 hours. And these were real contractions. A lot of people say, oh my gosh, those were just Braxton Hicks. It's okay. They were real contractions. Braxton Hicks do not dilate the cervix. They don't change the cervix. I was also aphasing during this as well. And they don't get closer together. They also don't have a pattern. So my contractions fizzled out and we were able to go home around 8 a.m. Actually, I think it was closer to 9:30. The next morning we go back for my 2nd steroid shot. That 2nd steroid shot they actually put in my butt instead of my thigh. The first one was in my thigh, the 2nd one was in my butt, and that one burned. If you know, you know. So that entire next day, I don't have any contractions, except I do lose my mucus plug that morning right before I get my steroid shot. However, if you didn't know, it's not a really big deal with that. It just means your cervix is changing a little bit. Mucus plugs do regenerate, and I knew this. The next day after getting my 2nd steroid shot, I woke up with contractions and I started timing them. They were about 4 minutes apart. My husband had already left for work at this point. I'm doing all the things. I take another pill because they give me a prescription of the pills that to stop my labor. I take another pill to stop the labor. It doesn't work. This time, I am now parenting while I'm in active labor. These contractions were getting more strong, and I was like, I'm already 5 centimeters dilated. I need my husband to come home from work to take me to the hospital. Mind you, our hospital is an hour away, and he works in that town, so he had to drive an hour back and then an hour back. We get to the hospital, doing all the things. I'm still 5 centimeters dilated, thankfully. I didn't want to have a preemie baby. At this point, in my hospital, they actually have mandatory NICU for any 35-weekers, mostly for observation, just to make sure that they are satting correctly. At this point, I'd already been having contractions for about 8 hours. They were getting closer together, more strong, all the things. And they were very, very, very painful. I get to the hospital, I'm still 5 centimeters dilated, so it is what it is. A few hours later, they came in and checked me. I was still 5 centimeters. But I was still regularly contracting. They took me off of the monitors. They actually didn't have the wireless monitors at this point, so I wasn't able to get into the tub with the monitors on, but they were able to let me off of the monitors for a little bit to get into the tub. This is where things start to be really frustrating. I get into the tub, and this is where my contractions start to space out. And at this point, I had already made my peace with the fact that I'm probably going to have a baby at 35 weeks and probably already going to need NICU time. So I was fine with going into full-blown labor and having this baby. So when my contractions stopped, I was very, very, very frustrated, and rightfully so. A few hours later, they discharge us, we go home. A week later, I start having contractions again. I'm 36 weeks and 6 days. I was like, of course they'll break my water, they'll do something to like augment my labor. I'm 1 day away from 37 weeks. That is like the time when they will actually try to augment a labor like that, when you're in full-blown active labor. Is it 37 weeks? And I thought that like because I was 36 and 6 that they would let me, but no. So I went into the hospital, they checked me in. I was 5.5 centimeters dilated, so I had effaced more, I had dilated more, all the things. I was able to actually get off of the monitors during this one because I was so close to 37 weeks. I was able to walk around the room. I was able to do all the things. I was trying to get this baby out of me at this point. I was over it. I was over it. Also, these are only 3 times that I went to the hospital, but I had multiple days in between where I would have contractions, but I would like psych myself out and be like, I'm not going. I don't want to be sent home again. By the way, don't do that. If you're having contractions regularly, go in. I'm doing all the things to try and get this baby out of me. I am doing squatting, I am on the birthing ball, I am in the tub, I am doing all the things to try and get this baby out of me, and eventually my contractions stop again. I have a full-blown mental breakdown in that hospital room. I remember I started crying, like sobbing to my husband because I was just like so frustrated that my body kept stalling out. Like, why am I not able to do this? This is my 3rd time having baby, and I don't know why my body just like doesn't want to do it. And the nurse walked in as I was sobbing. She was very confused as to why I was sobbing, so we had like a little heart-to-heart. And I was just like very frustrated and kind of like vented my feelings a little bit. And my nurses during this whole time were just like so great. I actually had one nurse during my first 2 admissions. She was incredible, and we talked about prodromal labor the entire time because this is my 2nd time. It was just so incredibly frustrating. My labor doesn't fully stop at this point. I was having contractions like every 10-ish minutes. But I decided that I wanted to go home, so we went home and we got some Panda Express on the way home because I was very sad. At this time, we are now 37 weeks and 6 days. I had already had more contractions a few days prior, didn't go into the hospital. That's the whole thing. I am so frustrated with my body. I'm so exhausted. A few days prior, I actually called up my doctor and I said, hey, how far along do I have to be in order for you guys to do anything? And they said 39 weeks. So that's great. At this point, I was desperate, and I took the midwives brew. Don't try it, okay? Don't. Monkey see, monkey don't do. I drank the midwives brew at 4 p.m. I had already been having contractions earlier that morning. They were a little spaced out, like 7 to 10 minutes apart, but they were like very strong still. So I got all the things to make a midwives brew, drank that at 4 o'clock. I took a nap, and a few hours later, I start having contractions. I immediately start getting ready because I'm like, we're going to the hospital. I'm already 5.5 centimeters dilated at my last appointment. I am going to the hospital. I'd only been having contractions for like 10 minutes at this point, but they were already starting to get closer and closer as I was doing my makeup. Yes, I wanted to feel better, okay? I had been in prodromal labor for 3 weeks. I didn't feel like myself. I just wanted to feel a little ounce of myself. Drop my kids off to where they're going, and we head to the hospital. We get there at 10 p.m. So if you're doing the math, I took the midwives brew at 4, started having contractions at 8, and we got there at 10. I am having contractions all the way to the labor and delivery floor. And in fact, to the labor and delivery floor, they have doors that you actually have to be buzzed into as a security measure. And no one was answering the door. There was also another guy standing there waiting for someone to open the door. And I was just full-blown having contractions during this whole time. That was incredibly frustrating. They eventually buzz us into the room. We get in there, and as she is trying to check me, she's like, okay, I'm gonna wait till this contraction is over. And as that contraction ends, I feel a gush. I thought my water had broken, and that's what I said. I said, I think my water has broken. And she goes in there, she looks, she says, I don't see any, but it could just be your hindwaters. So she checks me, I'm 6 centimeters dilated. And at this point is when my hospital is actually able to let me be admitted. I have to be at least 6 centimeters at my hospital, and trust me, I was trying to get there. She checks me, I'm 6 centimeters dilated, they do all the things, they try and get my veins, and I have the most stubborn veins. But let me tell you, this nurse was truly incredible. She was able to get it within like 2 tries. After this, I'm on the monitors for about 30 minutes just so they can get tracing on my baby's heart rate. 30 minutes later, they come in, they take me off the monitors. I'm able to walk around. I get into the bath at this point, but then I just feel like the bath just isn't doing it. So I get out of the bath about 15 minutes later, and I start working through my contractions on the birthing ball, walking around, doing all the things, just trying to get this baby into the right position, just trying to keep my labor going. The nurse says leave me alone for about 3 hours. I'm just working through my contractions, doing all the things, walking in the room, doing all the things. And I say to myself at midnight, I'm like, if I can make it 1 more hour, I want to ask to be checked. I wish that I hadn't done that because that left me so extremely discouraged. So at 1 o'clock, I asked to be checked, and I was still 6 centimeters dilated. I had been there for 3 hours. The nurse leaves. I then buzz her back in so I can get a peanut ball between my legs. The peanut ball helps to get your baby into the right position. It just helps maneuver your pelvis a little bit. So I put that between my legs, and let me tell you, that made the contractions 10 times worse. I actually start crying to my husband at this point because I'm just like so discouraged that I'm still 6 centimeters dilated. Honestly, I wish that I had known what I know now, and I wish that I had known what I knew an hour later, because if you would have told me in that moment, hey, you're gonna have your baby in an hour and a half, hold on, I wouldn't have been so discouraged. But I was, because it had been 3 hours, still at 6 centimeters dilated. My midwife walks in a few minutes later. I'm still like full on crying at this point, and she asked to check me. I say yes. She checks me. I'm definitely 6 centimeters dilated. She's been doing this for like 30 plus years, so I trust her fingers a lot more than a nurse. And she asks me the one question that I wish I had been educated on. Do you want me to break your waters? I sit with it for a second, because something in me was telling me to say no, but also I was very discouraged that I was 6 centimeters dilated and it wasn't dilating. I just wanted it to be over, and so I said yes. There was actually a minute of hesitation because I thought about getting the epidural. My whole plan the entire 9 months was to have an unmedicated birth, because I'd had 2 epidural births previously, loved them, but I wanted something different. And there was like a split second that I thought about getting an epidural. But I say, yes, you can break my waters. A few minutes later, she breaks my waters. I'm 6 centimeters dilated when she breaks my water. And 8 minutes later, she checks me. I have to stay on the monitors in the bed because they need to make sure that like everything is okay with the baby having her waters taken away. She checks me 8 minutes later, and I am 9 centimeters dilated. So yes, while having my waters broken did lead to me getting more dilated, having the baby go down lower, all those kinds of things, having my baby faster, it also led to more intense contractions. I honestly wish someone would have told me that breaking your waters actually makes labor very intense, but no one told me that. So I started having very intense contractions. My pain went from about a 6 to out of this world painful. Like, I didn't even know pain like that existed. I actually start feeling pressure, so I start pushing because I have the fetal ejection reflex, which is where you feel your baby going down. And so I start feeling that, and I start pushing. No one knew that I wasn't fully dilated. I was 9.5 centimeters dilated, which just essentially means that there is a part of my cervix that has like little lip left. So I start pushing on my side, and that is where they find out that I actually have a little bit of cervix left. She says push it out of the way. Most people can just like push it out of the way, and that's fine. I couldn't do that. So after a few minutes, this is like out of this world painful. I feel like my cervix is ripping. It was the most excruciating pain I've ever dealt with, ever. Because I wanted to push, like I was having that urge to push. I was feeling grunty. I was feeling very pushy, and I wasn't able to actually physically push. So I worked through my contractions in the bed, got onto my hands and knees, did all the things. And as soon as I flipped to my hands and knees, 5 minutes later, I start feeling pushy again. But at this point, I am scared to push because of last time pushing. I didn't want to experience that kind of pain again. So anyway, I start pushing on the bed. I start feeling the ring of fire. And as you're feeling the ring of fire, which is where the baby's head is crowning, that is where you should go the slowest. So my midwife tells me to do like little pushes to just like kind of not fully to prevent tearing. And so that's what I did. At this point is where my most viral video comes in of me screaming fucking ring of fire. Yeah, that's me. A few minutes later, she is born at 2:56 in the morning. I immediately bring her up to my chest. It was truly an incredible feeling being able to move after birth, because I was able to like bring her up to my chest. I was able to sit back down. I was able to do all the things, and like that was just incredible being able to like actually physically move. But now my little baby was here, and she was just like so cute. Oh my gosh, she was the most chunky baby I have ever had, and I just like I love that so much. She was just so cute, and I miss her little chunky cheeks. I can't believe she's 3. It's gone by so fast. Anyway, that is my entire birth story. I have an entire playlist if you want to go watch it.